That time I got reincarnated as a demon lord, English, by LordedoMal44. 42 The Ogre Village Battle P1 The battle finally began when the chief of the ogres and I gave the signal to our troops, each of our respective sides. Immediately, our troops began to move. My soldiers were almost all in the rear, only a few of them leaving for the battlefront, as had already been agreed with everyone. Among them were the Kiri and Ks, who formed pairs to always have a short-range specialist and a long-range specialist with them. That way, in addition to dealing with enemies before they approached, my soldiers could also deal with opponents who approached. That, and replacement soldiers who would switch places with frontline soldiers who were injured or tired, would ensure the safety of my troops. And in the end, as I said, the fight was in our hands, me and my executives. Let's take a look at what they're doing right now. A group of ogres was trying to get around the front line to try to get to Rimuru, attacking him from the rear. In front of them, the ogre with blue hair and a single white horn on its head was leading the group, being followed by an ogre similar in appearance to him, only older. The resemblance made it clear, both were father and son. I'll leave it to you this time. Don't be taken aback, my son. Understood, father. The ogre at the front of the group muttered this and quickened his steps, not taking his attention away from his surroundings. His family members, among the members of the ogre clans, were not as capable when it came to hand-to-hand combat, at least when compared to the other ogres. Even so, when it came to not being detected by the enemy, they were the best without a doubt. Of course, they were more than confident that they could defeat mere hobgoblins if it was a head-on fight, but that wasn't their goal. This was a war. It would all end when the enemy leader fell. That's exactly why his father, he and a small group were flanking the other groups. Their plan was to attack the goblin leader while he focused on the enemies that could come from the front and thus take him down quickly. Some people might think of this method as being cowardly, but a warrior who isn't even able to sense or reach his opponent cannot expect to be taken seriously in battle. If he wanted the ogres to respect him, as the leader of the ogres said was his goal, then he would need to go through this level of strategy. While thinking about that, the ogre leading the group suddenly felt a feeling that was quite strange to him. It was a feeling he couldn't remember feeling for a long time, back when his father was still training him in the art of sneaking around without being noticed. It was the feeling that he was being watched. Caution. The moment he heard his father's words, even if it was instinct, he reacted and took a step back. The place where his foot had been, just a second before, was hit by an arrow, with such force that the ground was shattered. What is it? Who's there? All members of the group instinctively grabbed their swords and prepared for combat. They hadn't seen the archer, they didn't know where he was, but they had a rough idea of his location because of where the arrow had come from. Therefore, they were on guard against anything coming from that direction, as they tried to see where the archer was. So you're not going to show up? Could it be that this Rimuru's subordinates are that scared? As soon as he spoke those words, the ogre was able to sense the aura that the archer was trying to hide. The ogre smirked at how simple it was to manipulate him, even with a simple provocation like that. Giving a slight signal to the others, the group broke up. He and his father were slowly advancing in a straight line towards the archer, clearly trying to get his attention. His attention, that way, would be focused on them, and that way the other four could corner him from behind. Even if they were attacked from the front, as long as they knew where the attack was coming from, they would have a chance to defend it. So what? Why don't you try attacking again? Too scared to deal with ogres? This time there was no reaction. His aura was still unstable. He didn't seem to be able to properly control his aura now that he was angry, or he was really bad at hiding his presence. Even so, neither he nor his father would care about that. This was something your father taught you a long time ago. If an opponent cannot sense his presence, then it is his fault for his own weakness. Son, don't forget the boss's words. Even if we knock him down, don't kill him. In fact, before the battle started, the head of the ogres asked everyone to avoid killing Rimuru's subordinates. The boss believed that even if they could just crush everyone, the enmity could be avoided by keeping everyone alive. At least that way, the Rimuru wouldn't insist on attacking them due to their dead subordinates. Hearing this murmur from his father, and knowing that this was the ogre chieftain's wish, all he could do was nod. Let's move forward at once. The others must be in position to attack. I don't even feel their presence anymore. Muttering this, the ogre and his father advanced slowly, making their presence easy to sense but avoiding making too much noise so as not to make it too obvious. They didn't want the archer to realize they were letting themselves be noticed just to lure him into a trap after all. Finally, when they were only a few steps away from where the archer was, and it was already possible to feel the small amount of aura he failed to hide, the ogre and his father stepped forward at once. They would have to be careful with the archer's arrows. After all, this is the best time for him to attack, but they would find a way to deflect his arrows. And then, when they got to the archer, what? Nothing. The place where the archer was, the place where they felt his aura coming from, was empty. There was nothing and no one there. No, it would be wrong to say that there was nothing there. There, in that place, where the archer should have been, there was only one arrow. A strange arrow, which seemed to be made of metal, and which was emitting a small amount of aura, the source of the aura they had been feeling all this time. Seeing how the trap they had set had failed, and not only that, but how their trap had lured them exactly where the archer wanted them to be, both of them felt the terror of being hunted for the first time in a long time. Not only that, the two ogre father and son went into despair in preparation for any attack the archer might launch, which they didn't even know where it might be coming from. All they could do was take up a back-to-back position, trying to avoid being attacked from behind. "Father, this archer doesn't seem to be as weak as we thought." "I was going to say the same, my son. He really doesn't look weak. Still, if he can't hit us, we win." The two continued to look around, clearly alert against any possible attacks which might occur, but both were starting to get apprehensive. There was no sign of where the ranger might be, but they were where he wanted them. And, to make matters worse, the only one who could attack was the archer, being a ranged specialist. And then, after a few seconds passed, they both realized that something was wrong. "Hey, you guys! Where are you? Come on, show up at once." The two heard no response. His companions, who should have been coming to attack the archer from the rear, didn't answer them, even as the seconds passed. Sensing the danger of this, the two, father and son, started running towards where their team's ogres should be. There was no way an archer, a mere hobgoblin, could have taken down 4 ogres in such a short time and without being noticed. But, to their horror, as they walked a little way they could see how 2 of their companions, who had come from the side, were down, with arrows sticking out of their backs. The son, seeing his friends lying face down with arrows in their backs, couldn't contain himself and ran to help them. They couldn't have died after only a few minutes. The arrows hadn't hit in vital places, as far as he could see. Before the son could get to the bodies, however, the sound of something falling distracted him. Something behind him had just hit the floor. Instinctively turning, and with a terror touching the depths of his soul, the ogre child saw a scene that completely stopped him. His father, who had been behind him perfectly fine all this time, had just fallen to the ground, an arrow in his back. His father, an ogre, should be tough enough to take it and still fight for a while, and still. Father. His father didn't react. His father didn't move, and although the arrow must have hit far from a vital point, he didn't seem to react. What happened? You must understand that none of Rimuru-sama's subordinates are cowards. The ogre felt even more terror when he heard those words being spoken, a voice that was coming from right behind him. Until he heard that voice, he was unable to sense any signs of presence. Still, when he heard the voice, the presence he felt was menacing, like the presence of a hungry animal hunting prey. Before he could even react, he felt an arrow strike his back. In response, he fell unresponsive to the ground. 2 ogres, father and daughter, rushed across the battlefield. They were both smiling strangely, a cheerful smile even though they were passing through enemies. Both father and daughter had taken down many enemies as they advanced, taking them all down with speed and with their heavy blows. Don't forget, daughter, no charge is better than a direct charge. Take down all enemies head on with full force. Understood, Dad? I won't forget about this. Oh, and don't tell your mother that. Understood. Don't talk to the strongest about the direct assault. The 2 ogres, both with purple skin and hair, continued to advance quickly, ignoring the few arrows that tried to hit them. Their speed was too high, the archers just couldn't target the 2 of them, and once they charged towards the hobgoblins that the enemy had as troops, one hit was enough to force them on the defensive. The daughter carried a spiked club with her while the father carried a combat hammer. Enemies just couldn't bear the brunt of such attacks, not just with sheer physical strength. That's why their advance had been continuous, without interruption, even though they slowed down to take down the enemies in their path. Still, both of them slashed the moment they felt a more powerful aura surge in front of them, sensing the presence of a stronger than average opponent. Stop right there. The moment they heard those words, they both actually stopped, luckily for both of them. In front of them, just a few meters from where they were standing, a silver spear struck. Looking in the direction of who had thrown the spear, the two were confused to see a warrior goblina, dressed in some animal leather armor and with another spear, which was the same as the first, in her hands. She looked down on them as if she were superior, and twirled the spear in her hands menacingly before stepping into a battle stance. Further ahead, in that direction, is Rimuru-sama. I won't let you get to him. The woman said this without hesitation, and soon after, she advanced towards the two, attacking her father first with her spear. The older ogre just smiled, putting his hammer in front and easily stopping all the power behind his attack. The woman, Akami, tried to attack again, first with the hilt of her spear and then with the blade, but both blows were easily stopped again. He seemed to move his great warhammer with ease, the same ease Akami used to move her spear. Despite this, Akami didn't give up. Launching another series of attacks, Akami combined all the attacks she knew to try to hit not only the father, but she used the handle of her spear to try to hit the daughter as well. Despite this, the daughter did not even bother to try to dodge it. She just walked away from the two and let Akami choose which one she would fight. Ha, why don't you two move forward? Akami, a little tired after trying to land a series of attacks, without success. All of her attacks had been easily parried or deflected, and neither ogre seemed to be really in the mood to launch an attack of their own. The two were just letting Akami keep attacking. It made Akami very frustrated to see that the two weren't even taking this situation as a fight seriously. You're not weak, girl. But your skills aren't so well polished. The way you're wasting your spells seems strange. You're using a new skill, aren't you? Huh? Well, yes. I've awakened my skill recently, so I'm using it. Huh, so that's right. The ogre set his hammer aside, seemingly uninterested in it for this battle. Instead, he positioned himself as if he were going to use his fists for this fight. Seeing how he did this, Akami's face darkened, sensing contempt in the ogre's daughter's smile as she watched them. Are you underestimating me? Akami was very angry. She understood that she was weaker than the ogres, and she understood that she hadn't had her unique skill for a long time, and therefore, she hadn't mastered its secrets. Still, it was horrible to be looked down on like that. Still, the older ogre just smiled gently, not really seeming to mock her. Nothing like that, young lady. You want to test the limits of your skill, don't you? Hearing those words, Akami's eyes widened for a few seconds, confused to receive that answer. Despite this, the ogre in front of her did not stop smiling. To tell you the truth, you probably can't beat us, even if you fight separately with my daughter or me. Well, with my daughter you'll have more chances. But the thing is, wouldn't it be fun to test this skill? I also want to see what you are capable of, young man. Hearing those words, Akami smiled. Not just knowing that she wasn't being underestimated, but also that her enemies would help her understand this skill she had acquired. Her will to fight had increased dozens of times, and Akami couldn't help but smile wildly. Akami was aware that she would lose this fight. There was no way to defeat two ogres at the same time, at least these two. They weren't just any ogres, they were among the strongest on the battlefield. Otherwise they wouldn't have been able to advance to this place. Only, even though she knew it, Akami would still fight. As Rimuru-sama's subordinate, as someone who was honored to join Tempest thanks to his goodwill, I must give it my all. Please give it your all. And help me see what this my skill can do it. Akami charged forward again, the spear in her hand gleaming as she added a battle will to the tip, making it that much sharper. If she hit a tree in this state, the spear Akami was carrying could easily pierce through the trunk to the other side. The elder ogre, realizing that Akami's actions were not simple, smiled as he used a battle will on his fists, coating them in his aura. That way he would even this battle, or it would if they were on the same level. They weren't on the same level. There was a gigantic difference between the two, if a person were to measure it. As Akami tried to hit the ogre, he easily dodged using his hand to defend the spear while pushing it to one side. Soon, with his free hand, The ogre landed a straight punch towards Akami's chest, a blow that she dodged with difficulty, avoiding only by the distance of a hair's breadth. Even dodging, Akami felt his chest hurt, the result of the ogre's aura coming into contact with his body and exerting pressure. Getting into position again, Akami tried to attack once more, using the spear blade as he attacked from above, but the ogre dodged once more and charged forward. Akami barely had enough time to back away just before another punch was directed towards her, which she used the hilt of her spear to parry. Akami put distance between herself and the ogre in front of her once more. Her arms went a little numb after she parried this attack, a testament to how much stronger it had been compared to the previous attack. Damn. He's much stronger than I thought. Akami cursed internally, taking a few more steps back to gain more distance from her enemy. If one of those blows landed directly on her, then she would be knocked out at best, and at worst she would end up dying instantly. You're not bad, but you're at a disadvantage, girl. Let me teach you an important lesson. The ogre muttered this and changed his fighting stance, widening the distance between his legs to widen his base, placing both arms in bent positions to be prepared to deliver a strike at every turn. His current stance was that of a true martial artist. All the hairs on Akami's body stood on end, feeling the aura present in the ogre's fists increase even more in intensity and density. Against an opponent who uses his fists, ranged weapons are useless. The ogre muttered this and charged forward, crossing the distance between him and Akami in a single leap. In an instant he was in front of her and, before she could move her weapon, a punch headed towards her stomach. Akami could be sure, just by looking at the aura surrounding his fist, that it would explode her internal organs if it landed a direct hit. A full blow. Akami used his arm to stop the attack coming from the ogre, and as a result of that direct hit, his body was thrown back with full force. Her arm made an audible sound as her bone broke, and she could feel her internal organs sway with the force that attack had taken, even after parrying. 2 more direct attacks like that, and Akami would go down, even if he defended. Dad, don't forget not to kill her. That was a direct request from the boss. Oh, it's true. Well, don't worry. Her arm broke from that last attack. I doubt she can keep fighting. Akami raised her eyes slightly, looking towards the father and daughter who were talking calmly in the middle of the battlefield. Neither of them seemed to consider her presence a threat, and even though she understood that she wasn't a threat to them, she still felt frustration fill her chest. How could she lose here? Wait. Before the two could walk away, ignoring her, Akami forced her good arm to raise her spear, pointing the point at the older ogre. I haven't fallen yet. Come and prove my skill some more. The ogre seemed surprised at first, not expecting her to get up after receiving an attack like that. Still, he did nothing but smile at her, the grin of a beast he found a source of amusement. Assuming a fighting stance again, the ogre charged forward, again covering all the distance between the two in the blink of an eye. Akami stood, looking at the approaching ogre's fists. A barrage of punches landed at her.